Yo, what is happening, cult builders? I'm excited to welcome you to our first live Q&A and interview of 2021 with our esteemed guest. I hope I'm pointing the right way on the screen because it kind of switches it up sometimes. But we got Grant Eilertson here. Did I say your last name right, by the way?
You did, man, and that's it's a unicorn of a person who does. I appreciate
it. For sure. So we got Grant here. I've been posting about Grant for the past couple of days, so I'm sure many of you guys who've been waiting for this interview already know at least a bit about him. Maybe you watched a couple of his YouTube videos as well. You might have seen him in other places with Tribe of Buyers and elsewhere. But for those of you who don't know Grant is, he's a sales professional. He's built 2 7-figure online coaching businesses, has worked with over 1,000 different business owners at and above, I believe, the 6-figure level. And he's coming in today to answer all of your questions about sales, everything from, getting on those sales calls, closing and enrolling more clients, going about follow-up, overcoming objections. Nothing is off the table. So I'm pretty excited for this live interview. The way we're going to go about it is I got some questions that I prepared because I know it takes time for you guys to get the notifications and come join us. But then we're going to pass the floor off to you because I want to make sure that all of your questions are able to get answered. So in the meantime, while we're waiting for those notifications to go out, let's give Grant a chance to, introduce himself and tell us a bit about his story. And also, for those of you, I see a couple of you already in here, I want you to do me a quick favor and hit that heart button on this video because that's going to tell Facebook that you love us and we love you too. And it's going to get this out to more people so that they can benefit from what we're going to talk about today. So hit that heart button, comment with hashtag cultbuilders if you're watching this live or on the replay. And with that said, I'm going to pass the floor off to Grant. Tell us a bit about yourself, man. Tell us how you got into the online space, how you got into sales and, your story.
All right, brother. Well, thanks for the warm invite. I'll keep this super short and sweet because you could find out about me just looking on social media and all that good stuff. But I got my start in sales actually when I picked up a job when I was 17 working at GNC, and that was my first commission paid gig, and I was hooked from the start because if I can get paid on performance, that means if I can get more efficient and develop the skill sets, then that means I can make more with less time. And because some of my highest values are freedom, time freedom and money freedom being a big one, and contribution, sales just made sense for me. So when I capped out my earning potential working with GNC as a store manager, I actually started my own online fitness training business. And I sucked from the start. I was terrible. But I got some really good coaches that helped me along the way to go from sweating bullets on my first sales call asking for $1,500 when previously that was what I would make over the course of 2 weeks to now obviously having closed a few $1,000,000 in coaching sales myself and having worked with a little over 1,000 businesses now. It's been a lot of fun. So what I do now is I manage sales teams and I like to foster talent so that other people can tap into that time and money freedom in their own lives, whether you're a sales rep right now or an entrepreneur selling your own offer. When it comes to high ticket sales, that's my jam. So I'm excited to dive in and drop some bombs on this thing today.
Cool. Sounds good, man. And appreciate that introduction. So again, for those of you who are just joining us, the goal of this live today, and whenever I do these live Q&As, is I really want to give you guys control of the direction that we take with this. So I do have some questions I'm going to ask Grant, but I'm sure you had tons of questions and, tons of things that you struggle with on your sales calls. So this is your opportunity to essentially get free coaching right now from someone who's closed millions of dollars in sales. So what I would like you to do starting now and throughout the duration of this Facebook Live is just drop in the comments the questions that you have. And even if, you get new questions, follow-up questions from any of the answers that Grant gives, don't be shy. Just drop them in the comments. There's no stupid question. We'll be happy to answer whatever you need help with. So to get us started on jumping right into it, a lot of people, their questions obviously are going to be about objections. That's one of the big things people are always struggling with when it comes to sales, or they're worried about is how am I going to overcome objections and the different types of objections that they might face. So what I would like to start off with, man, is you worked with a lot of people, you've coached a lot of people in sales. What are the most important, tips that you can give somebody right now who's either already struggling with objections and is just leaving sales calls not closed because they don't know how to deal with them, or who is, fearful of the objections and that's kind of holding them back even in booking more sales calls.
Okay. Well, first off, let's start off with a quote from Tony Robbins, because I firmly believe in this and I live every day from this space. The quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. So that's twofold in the context of today's interview, because one, the value of this live stream will be dictated 100% by the quality of your questions. And that doesn't mean you need to sit there and think about the most complicated thing. In fact, the simplest questions tend to yield the best results. Number two, your selling is not telling. And I want you to write this down in the comments below so that you can really anchor this in. Selling is not telling, because if I say it, you doubt it. But if you say it, you own it. And so where so many rookie sales reps and entrepreneurs go wrong from the start is that they just talk too much. They don't ask good questions. They instead try and tell their prospects all of the reasons why they need to do this. They need to do this with them. They need to do this now. This is the right price. But it all just goes in one ear and out the other. And chances are, if you're talking too much, you're getting counterfeit yeses, as Chris Voss would say, that just push you to the end, where someone really is just in intel gathering stage and not actually emotionally compelled to make a purchasing decision. So another key point, write this one down in the comments as well. People buy on emotion, and then they justify with logic after the fact. People don't make logical purchasing decisions, they make them emotionally. They've done lab studies where with people who have the inability to access the emotional parts of their brain, they can rationalize all day long about what would possibly be the best direction for them to go, but they can't make the decision because decisions are made emotionally and backed up with logic after the fact. So as long as you understand those couple things, that selling is not telling and people will buy emotionally, you will start to find your flow naturally and without the need for clunky sales scripts that disconnect you emotionally from your prospects. You'll be able to ask the right questions. There's 7 in particular that you must ask, and of course we'll get to that in a few, so make sure you stick around. But the main thing that comes up as far as objections with people are typically timing and finances. And instead of the whole, well, I can't afford it. Well, can you afford not to do it? Combative approach. What we need to do is pre-handle what we know is going to come up on the back end ahead of time so that we're able to mitigate these concerns before we actually move into the presentation, pitch, and objection handling process. So just as a quick snapshot, instead of me asking, or instead of me telling you, hey, of course you need to do this, it's the right financial decision. What I want to do is ask you, what's the cost if nothing changes? If things were to continue down this same pathway, do you honestly see things getting better or worse? Really? And what's the cost if nothing changes? Mm-hmm. Will be much more effective than saying, hey, this is going to make you a whole buttload of money. Let's go. Because again, if I say it, you doubt it. If you say it, you own it. Same thing with timing. Instead of me telling you all about why the stars are aligned for this perfect opportunity for you now, if I were to ask, well, I get that this is important to you, but why now? Why not just wait to solve this issue? If you tell me, again, you own it. It's much more impactful to have the right questions in your arsenal than to try and rely on you being persuasive enough in your talking to try and close sales.
I got you. So in terms of having those questions, man, when you're going into the sales call, how prepared would you say? Like, obviously, I mean, you have preparation for a sales call, but what I mean is you have these specific questions that you use, right? So how much would you say your sales calls are sticking to this kind of script or direction that you're taking the person versus more playing it by ear and tailoring it to that specific conversation you're having with the person? Like, how do you balance that?
Well, so here's the thing, like sales is a lot like baking. It kind of sounds funny, but bear with me as I walk through this. When you have a recipe for baking a cake, you can have all the right ingredients, But it's not just a matter of throwing them all in a bowl, putting it in the oven, and calling it good. There's actually a certain sequence that these ingredients need to be mixed in order for it to work, right? Like this is a matter of melting the butter to then combine it with the flour and the sugar in the right order for you to be able to make a cake. Same thing with sales. You could be equipped with all the right questions, but if you mess up the structure and flow, then you'll still find yourself missing sales. So we'll run through it super quick. A basic sales call will look like open, build rapport, pre-frame, intel gathering stage, transition, presentation, pitch, objection handling. Now, there's a couple more things that go into those specific phases of a call. We can get granular, but if you zoom back and you just look at it from the bird's eye point of view and make sure that you're keeping to that general process and that you're asking the right questions, which are those 7 questions that pre-handle objections ahead of time, then you're going to find you can have a really authentic conversation without having to go word for word on a script. And if you can't tell already, I don't believe in scripts. They can be training wheels that get someone, used to what a sales call looks like on the front end. But again, people make purchasing decisions emotionally. And if you disconnect emotionally from them, you lose leverage. So that's huge.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Awesome, man. So this is a reminder, by the way, because I see more people are joining in as we speak. Any questions you guys have, just drop them in the comments. I'm starting off with a couple questions to get the conversation going, but really we want to answer your specific questions all around, your sales conversations and how to close more clients. So another angle, man, is, you talked about like how you can prevent objections before like actually jumping on the call, right? With how you qualify people, your marketing and other things like that. So can you speak more about that? What would you recommend in terms of marketing as well as, qualifying before the call in order to save yourself headaches when you're actually on the call with people?
Oh, that's a great question. So, if you're a sales rep and you have zero control over your company's lead gen process, well, you're working with what you've got. But chances are, just based on the audience that you have here, Zeky, I have a feeling that most people have some control over their content and the call booking process. And if that's the case, you can do a lot of the legwork on the front end. And the cool thing is that if you do it on the front end in your content, well, that mitigates a lot of objections, concerns, and stickiness on calls. I think it's T. Harv Eker says, if you want to change the fruits, you've got to change the roots, and the roots are in your content. So 2 keys, there's a lot more to it, of course, but 2 keys that will make a really big difference if you want to keep things simple. Every time you are closing a sale, when you get to the point where your prospect says yes, don't just run their card information and move on. Ask why. Why is a question that will cause your counterpart or your prospect, for example, in this context, to dig in their heels and argue for their stance, to basically get into a position of defense. Obviously, used in the wrong context, why will crush your sales. However, when they say yes and you ask, okay, well, why is it a yes for you? Not only are you creating a really effective tie down on the back end of your sale to make sure that you're mitigating refunds, chargebacks, and you're also being able to collect as much upfront as possible. What they are saying yes to gets to become your next piece of content. Mm-hmm. So if I said, okay, well, why is it a yes for you? And let's say the prospect mentions, well, I've actually been on a few calls lately and it sounds like your offer is way more supportive than anything else. Oh, really? Can you tell me a little bit more? Yeah, no one else does these like weekly check-ins 1-to-1. And I think that would be really helpful for me. Cool. Now take that and make a post about it. Talk about how support could be the game changer. And if you are not accepting the support that's already there in your life, it's costing you big, right? And for example, reframing that asking for support is not weak, it's smart. Because you can shortcut the process, effectively standing on the shoulders of giants to get what you want way faster. Mm-hmm. The other key, and so write that down, ask, why is it a yes for you? And then make that into your piece of content next. The other thing is identifying pattern objections. And I just did a video on this, and I think it dropped maybe yesterday on YouTube. I've got a pretty big backlog just waiting to post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But essentially, if you can identify pattern objections, so things that come up on a regular basis, obviously more than once or twice, it's not just the unicorn thing that you need to address, but if it's come up a few times, for example, spouse or finances, wow, that's a lot. I don't think I can afford that. Now it's just not the right time. Address those objections in your content itself, because now you have influence over a large majority of people instead of just one-to-one interactions where you're trying to fix what's broken in your content. If you use your calls more as a feedback loop than just an opportunity to close sales, then you're going to close a hell of a lot more sales long-term because you're nipping it in the butt, effectively changing the roots. So in that video, I went through an example of how one of our clients, Derek, was getting financial objections most commonly. And he put up a post specifically around that to the tune of, quote, how much does it cost? If that's your first question to me, that tells me quite a few things about you. And he goes on to empathize with their situation and show them why that level of thinking is what's actually keeping them stuck. That then prevented finance objections coming up for him, and he was able to almost double his close rate just from a single post alone, because he hit it at the root. So those are two big things. Identify pattern objections and make sure that you're asking, why is it a yes for you? Both of which become your content. That's how you also never run out of things to say in your content. I don't come up with stuff. I just listen to my audience and I speak to that.
For sure. So here's another question for you, man, that relates to that is, jumping on sales calls with people is also a really powerful marketing research tool, kind of what you alluded to right now, right? So now when you're on those calls, how do you, trying to think the right way to word this, but basically, you want to be present in the call, obviously, but also you don't want to lose a lot of those nuggets that you can use later for content, for marketing, for adjusting your sales message and all that kind of stuff. So when you're in the calls, are you like recording your calls and then reviewing them later, or how do you approach this systematically to make sure you don't lose any of those things that can be really helpful for your marketing?
Oh, that's a great question. So two things. Obviously, I record every call. I do them on Zoom. It's really helpful because you got cloud storage, and because you can meet face-to-face with people, you can actually take advantage of a lot more than just sound. I mean, the words you say are really only about 7% of your communication. The rest of it is tonality and body language. So when you can meet with someone on Zoom, it's a lot more effective for closing. You'll find that out if you're not already doing Zoom calls, if you switch over to that. So yes, I'll record and then I'll go back through, because listening to your sales calls is one of the fastest ways to improve. A lot of times things sound very different when you listen back to them versus what you thought it sounded like in the moment. And one of the biggest myths in communication is that it's actually happening. So if you go back through and put yourselves in the prospect's shoes, you can identify a lot of things that you could have done better. And of course, you have the market research right there that you can go back through over and over again. And then number two, I take really short, like bullet point notes. Obviously, I type them down here, and I just use Apple's notes right over to the side of me. And if you're not already using a really solid note-taking process on calls, I do have a video on YouTube specifically about that. What most people will do is just copy and paste the 7 questions sheet, put that over to the side, and then fill in the responses as they go through. Because that does a couple things. It makes sure that you don't miss any questions because you get too wrapped up in the conversation. For example, oh man, I forgot to ask, like, hey, what's the cost if nothing changes? But two, then you've got bullet points that you can then reinsert when you're doing your presentation and your pitch. And pro tip, if your presentation is exactly the same on every call, you're losing sales there, because a presentation should be crafted on the spot to actually fit your prospect's real needs and goals in their language. Now, that's a really big key. So again, make sure if your presentation is identical call to call, you're going to be missing sales because you're not actually adapting that to your prospect's needs. And that doesn't mean changing the offer itself. It just changes how it's communicated. Does that make sense?
I see. Okay, awesome, cool. So you mentioned you have a video on the whole note taking thing. So I'll post a link later. I'll come back and post in the comments. But he has
there's a lot of videos for
So you can check out his YouTube channel. What I'll do actually is I'll post a link to your YouTube channel so they can check out all your videos there. That'll be easier. So, or as a reminder, I see more people joining in on us. If you have not already done it, please hit that heart button so that more people can see this video on Facebook, and also leave a comment and let us know what questions you have around high ticket sales, because really this live Q&A is going to go for whatever time you guys need to answer your questions. If there's no questions, we're just going to end up cutting it short. So make sure to drop your questions in the comments below. So earlier, man, you kind of went over a process that, like, how to lay out the framework for a high ticket sales conversation. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Obviously, it would be a whole training in and of itself to go into granular details, so we don't need to do that. But if you can just explain each of the portions that you mentioned before and how they play into the whole sales process, I think that would be helpful for people.
Okay. Well, let's go through piece by piece at a high level overview. As far as opening up a call, I mean, what we need to do first is just establish common ground, that we're both humans and this is a human-to-human conversation, right? And this doesn't need to take a lot of time. Don't go off to Pluto. You don't need 5 minutes to really get to know someone's life story, because that'll come in the intel gathering stage. And we don't want too much time to pass before we set the frame for the call. So just 1 to 2 quick questions, hey, where you at in the world? Very cool. It'll change depending on your situation, but don't overthink this part. Just be a human, be normal. Now, here's where a lot of people miss sales. They don't adequately pre-frame the call before going into it. And this is really important, because if I, for example, just hopped on and I launched straight into probing questions, I create what feels like a combative relationship, or an investigative relationship, where someone's like on the spot and I'm just digging for information. When I do that, they're going to guard what's really important. I might get cocktail answers that sound fine, but I'm not actually getting down to the real root of what's going on for someone. And I will never make a diagnosis, or I'll never make a prescription, without proper diagnosis. Because in the medical space, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. Think about that when it comes to your sales calls. And drop that down below so that you can anchor that in. Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. So when I'm pre-framing a call, what I want to do is essentially set the agenda and the frame. So it can look as simple as, hey, Zeky, I understand that you reached out for some support with growing your online business, and I'm fully prepared to talk with you about that today. What would probably be most appropriate, though, is if I got a chance to understand your situation a little bit better before we dive into the details. So would it be cool if I just started off by asking you a couple quick questions about where you're currently at? So it's very simple, but I'm establishing that this is going to be a collaborative relationship where we are going to be asking questions so that we can then give proper direction. Not just so I can sell you something, but hey, I understand that you're looking for some support with growing your business. And that is something that we might be able to help you with. But what would be most appropriate is if I got to understand your situation a bit better first, so I can give you proper guidance. Cool if we just start off with a few questions? This is key. A lot of people just miss it because they don't set the frame right. Then when you go into your intel gathering stage of the call, this is where the 7 questions are paramount. The order of which, much less important than the fact that you check them all off in a way that makes sense for the conversation. Because some people, when you ask, hey, what kind of goals are you looking for? What are you looking to achieve? A lot of people aren't focused on that. They're actually focused on the pain and what's going wrong. So if they were to go there first, but then I tried to derail the conversation and move back to vision, I create sales resistance. So I'm actually going to follow the prospect where they want to go, just making sure that I check off the important questions. So whether you go into what they really want first or what they really want to move away from, totally cool. You just need to make sure you have full logical and emotional clarity on those 2 things. You could think of them as like the prison that they're currently in and the promised land that they want to get to, if that helps visualize things. So Once you've gone through that, now we have a transition point in the call where we're going from leaned back, skeptical, like, hey, I mean, we might be able to help you with that, but can I ask you a couple more questions just to be sure? Once we are crystal clear on what they want, what's holding them back, what the cost is if nothing changes, all that good stuff. And then we make our transition. It's what other people might call a tempo change. So we're going from, I don't know, to got it. Well, based on everything you told me, we can absolutely help you accomplish those goals. Probably a lot faster than you even thought. It's a tonality shift from skeptical to certain. This is also then where we'll go into asking qualifying questions just to make sure that the prospect is 100% in for the process. And then we'll go through our presentation. Now, the presentation, like I mentioned before, shouldn't be standardized to where it's always the same. But you should have a systematic flow for being able to take what they said and put it into a process that makes sense. Here's where people miss sales a ton as well. They will over communicate the deliverables of their offer, essentially trying to sell. And can we swear on here?
Yeah.
Cool. They're trying to sell their shiny shit and no one wants to buy it. No one cares about your program. No one cares about your course. No one cares about your offer. And I get that that might not be fun to hear because you've spent a lot of time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, and tears putting together what you believe to be the best possible offer. And that's awesome. Keep doing that. But that's not how you sell it. Because again, people don't care about your offer. They care about what it's going to get them. They care about the results. They care about having their problem solved. So I have a systematic flow for this. And this is basically, and type this down in the chat below, make sure you implement this on your calls. Because you said problem, what we'll do is solution. And for you, that means benefit. And then put in a little tie down. So just as an example, let's say someone told me that, okay, I'm selling a fitness offer and they've been through a whole bunch of different crash diets in the past. Nothing's worked. So I'd say, hey, because you mentioned this would actually be the 6th time that you've tried a new diet. And in the past, they've only contributed to this weight loss and weight gain cycle, leading to a lot of frustration and no results. What we're going to do is craft a completely custom approach to nutrition that allows you to, so that was a very simple, tiny little solution.
Yeah.
That will allow you to keep the same foods that you love so that you're not depriving yourself, feeding into a binge and restrict cycle that will allow you to consistently lose weight over time so that by the time you're 10 pounds lighter, you're in a space where it never comes back again so that we can effectively solve this problem for good, keeping you from ever having to do another diet again. How does that sound for you? It's going to be way different than if I just say, hey, we have custom macros. We'll make sure that you have exactly the numbers that you need to hit. And it's really cool. It's in this workout app so you can go in there whenever you want to and look at no. What do they care about? They want off the diet cycle and they want a permanent solution. So make sure that you're crafting your presentation to fit that. Because you said problem, what we'll do is solution. And for you, that means benefit. Tie down. Last part where people just completely miss sales a lot is they will move from the presentation and into the pitch in the same breath. Like, so we'll do all of this for you and it's just price. Before they actually have tie down and commitment to the process itself. It's so subtle, but it makes an enormous difference. Before you move into pricing, you need to get commitment on the process. So it's like, okay, cool. Now, based on what we just went through, does that feel like the perfect fit for you? Any questions for me about the process specifically? Or does that sound like what you've been looking for? If there's questions, comments, concerns, we need to handle them there before we introduce the complication of finances. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, what we're going to get is smokescreen objections on the back end that you can't handle even if you have a good process because it's not the real issue. It's just thrown out there because maybe finances is the real thing, but they're saying, well, all of a sudden I don't have time. And if you were to handle the timing objection, well, you're just dealing with smoke. It's not the real thing. So you'll get really frustrated and lose sales and not know why. So you need to make sure that you have commitment to the process first. No, it sounds like the perfect fit. Okay, why do you think it is? Oh, this, that, and the other. I'm really excited for it. Okay, cool. Well, where would you like to go from here? When they say, well, I want to get started as soon as possible. Cool. Now we'll move into the presentation of price. And of course, we need to reassociate one more time with the pain and the promised land so that that's the last thing in their mind, not just price. And, you know, without going too granular details, there's other ways that we do that as well. You can find them on YouTube. But then when you go into your objection handling process, you need to have a solid framework for dealing with this so that you don't just run up against a wall and not know what to say. Now, I don't want to waste too much time like going through that because there's also a full YouTube video on my objection handling process. It's 4 steps that you can use repeatedly to close deals if you missed something on the front end. But what I want you to focus on instead of that is actually making the sale on the front end. Because so many people ask me like, hey, how do I handle this objection? What about this one? What about that? What about that one? It's like there's no objection to handle if you've never made the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Because the objection is really just a concern. It's someone saying maybe, like, I think this would work for me, but I'm a little bit concerned about this. An objection that is actually rooted in someone who's already sold and they want it is very different than someone who's just like trying to get off the phone.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Awesome. Appreciate that, man. So, you know what, guys, by the way, reminder, drop your questions in the comments because I'm coming to the end of my questions soon. But the next thing I wanted to ask you about, man, is now, because we talked a lot about like tactical stuff in the sales process.
Yeah.
The next thing I'd like to ask you about is more so like mindset shifts that people, if they want to close more sales, what are some necessary mindset shifts that you find people are lacking a lot of times when you begin coaching them through the sales process?
There's a few. You know, a lot of people that struggle with making sales is because they have kind of a broken money mindset. Like, and they'll sell with their own wallet, essentially. Don't assume someone's financial situation based on your own. I mean, when I made my first high ticket sale and I made $1,500 there, I was literally, if I didn't make that sale, I didn't know how I was going to be able to pay for my rent the next month. That was only a couple days away. And so if I let that cloud my certainty on the call, I would have lost the sale. You have to be able to put your own money mindset crap on the back burner and develop the skills until you've actually fixed that. And there's internal work you can do with mindset coaches to be able to rewire that. But a lot of it's just going to come from experience and not getting too attached to the sale. So that's another one. Mm-hmm. If you are more attached to making the sale than helping the prospect make an appropriate buying decision, you're actually going to lose sales. Because if you're, for example, more enthusiastic or more committed to getting their money than you are about helping them, they can feel it. It's energetic. Yeah. You know when someone's just out to like take your money versus when they genuinely care. And it's really, really hard to fake. Just be a good human. Do what is in service to them, and things will flow a lot easier. Let's think of a couple more. This is a big one. People love to buy stuff. We love to buy things. I just went to Vegas for a weekend and I just blew like a ridiculous amount of cash on things because I love to buy stuff. I love fancy food. I love, you know, doing fun attractions and seeing shows and stuff. I love to buy things. But people hate being sold to. So write this down in the comments. People love to buy, but they hate being sold to. And it's funny because I know we're talking about sales right now, but the best salesman is the one who's able to create a buying experience for the customer, not just focus on selling. Mm-hmm. And so instead of being a product pusher, focus on being a problem finder and a solution provider. Not a product pusher, but a problem finder and a solution provider. People will pay a lot more money to solve a pain in their life than they will to accomplish what they want. Just think about it. It costs, $60 for a good month's supply of a multivitamin, $50 a month for a gym membership. I spend about $1,500 a month on organic food. So, okay, we're looking at like $2,000 a month. This is to help have good health. If I were to have bad health, for example, like when I had my cancer diagnosis and I went to the ER, I spent 10 grand in a day at the ER because I was in a lot of pain. People will pay a lot more to solve pain and problems in their life than they will to make things better, like with the focus on that. So something you can keep in mind is like, painkillers are a lot easier to sell than vitamins. So instead of like trying to just speak to like all that's possible with your offer, instead take a step into your prospect's world, figure out where they're currently in pain, dealing with problems that they want to go away, and then just help them to see how your product would be a solution to that pain, where moving forward with you would eliminate that pain from their life so they can live a better life. Way different. I think those are some of the biggest ones, but I'll throw one more in there too, just because it's top of mind. You don't need to be the expert. You just have to be able to solve someone's problems. And that usually just means being one step ahead. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to nail every single part of the process. And you don't have to be better than everyone else. There's always going to be a bigger fish. And if you let that stop you from being bold and making the offer and getting up to help people, well, you're doing a disservice not only to your bank account, but to the people that you could genuinely help. You don't need to be the expert. You just got to be one step ahead and be able to help people solve their problems. If you come from this space, some of these little mindset tweaks that we just talked about, your sales are going to flow a lot easier. And you won't be driven to drink at night as a result of being so burned out, having these like energy consumptive conversations. You connect with people on a real human level and it actually charges you up. It's a very different experience.
Nice. Awesome, man. So cool. Appreciate that. And, earlier you mentioned about when we were talking about recording sales calls, you mentioned one of the reasons you record sales calls is actually it helps you improve your sales process and your sales skills, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say someone's just getting started with a new program, they're launching their high ticket program, they're jumping on enrollment calls and all of that, and they're recording it to review how they're doing, but they're new to the sales part of the picture. So they're not that great at it yet. When they're trying to self-audit themselves, how would you figure out if the problem is actually the sales process or their skills as a salesperson versus the offer itself?
Well, that's a good one. There's an element to difficulty to that because, the eyeball can't see itself. It's hard to read the label from the inside of the bottle. This is why it can make a lot of sense to pay a good coach for a call breakdown. There's good coaching programs and stuff out there, that could be decently helpful, but I've never really gotten a whole lot out of a sales course that I took. The real exponential jumps forward in my ability to close sales came from having people who were a lot better than me listen to my calls and tell me what they noticed. After doing that a few times, then I began to start being able to pick up on the things that I was doing wrong on my own calls. Now, that said, if you're in a situation where, for example, it's just physically impossible for you to invest a little bit into your education so you can make a lot more money, then put yourself in the buying shoes as you listen to your sales call. Instead of thinking about how did I sound, think about what am I experiencing as the prospect sitting as a fly on the wall. You don't have to be a great salesperson to feel what it's like in a sales conversation, whether there's a ton of resistance or whether it flows naturally. Also, if someone is giving you, well, think about it, man. You can feel energetically when someone is in alignment with their words. If there's congruence there. And what I mean by that is if I were to ask someone, how long has this been an issue for you? They're like, 2 years. I'm going to need to dig deeper into that because I don't feel congruence with that. If it really was a problem they've been in pain for 2 years about, the answer might be a lot more like, it's been 2 years.
Mhm.
You see the difference? I mean, it's a subtle shift, but you can pick up so much just listening to people's tonality. And here's the other thing, so overlooked. Aside from strategies and tactics and learning the psychology of being a better salesman, the more you understand yourself and why you do what you do, the more you'll understand other people. It's fun to sit at the mall or whatever and people watch, see what other people do, but watch yourself. Think about, why did I buy that? So when I went to Vegas over the weekend, I paid for this suite and it was very cool looking and all that good stuff. I was set on it. When I got there, I ended up purchasing like a big upgrade. And a lot of people would just do it and then move on. But the way my brain works, because I'm in this constant state of self-reflection, and my girlfriend thought it was hilarious, because all the way back to the car to grab our stuff, I was thinking like, why did I buy that? What did she say? How did she say it that caused me to pull out my card and it was an effortless purchasing decision, right? When you can think about what was the last high ticket purchase that I made and why did I make it? Maybe even look back at the recorded sales call if you have it, for example, the last time you purchased something. Why did I buy? What feeling was I in search of that this offer allowed me to tap into? Why did I buy? And if you haven't made a high ticket purchase ever and you're trying to sell something expensive, you need to buy something expensive. One of the best ways to actually learn how to sell something expensive is to buy something expensive. It sounds funny, but when you invest in yourself at a high level, it becomes a lot easier to then enroll other people at a high level. One, because you've experienced it yourself, and so you can actually be authentic from that space. I believe that you can't lead other people to where you aren't willing to go yourself. So really let that sink in. If you're trying to sell a bunch of expensive stuff to people and you refuse to buy anything of high value for yourself. And two, being in those situations allows you to then come into contact with the emotional state that pushed you to buy. We're a lot more like each other than you might think at a core level. Maybe we look different, sound different, say different things, but the feelings pretty much the same. We all have the same range of emotions. So understand that because purchasing decisions are made emotionally and then backed up with logic, the better you understand yourself and how you work as an emotional being, the better you'll be able to relate to your prospects and take them where they need to go, even if it's off script a little bit.
Cool.
I feel like I just rambled on forever. Hopefully this has been valuable.
No, that was great, man. Very valuable, and I appreciate that. Go on all the tangents you want. But yeah, man. Another question I got actually was just while you were talking, I was remembering something you were talking about before. Is the detachment from the sale. You mentioned how you in your own journey, when you made that first sale, it was like $1,500. You were in a position where you needed that sale to pay your rent, and I know other people go through that kind of situation too. So in a situation like that, how do you detach yourself from the sale? Because it's very easy to start getting like desperate, especially if it's the end of the month and you got bills to pay.
Yeah. Well, and dude, I mean, I commend you. I was reading your posts that you've been making about the the letter that almost killed me, and I resonate so deeply with that. Personally, I think I have an unfair advantage, and so do you, because we've been at really low levels to where like we pretty much had nothing, right? And like if you've had nothing, it's a lot easier to be okay with nothing. And if you can come to a place where you know that you will be fine as a human if you have to move and figure things out on the fly, if you can come to a place where that's okay and you're not in this crazy sense of fear, things flow a lot easier. It's like what you chase runs in nature, and what we're too attached to. It's like when you stick your hand in a pickle jar, the old adage, and you like grab the pickle, but now you can't get it out because you're squeezing so tight, and you got to loosen your grip a little bit so it comes out. It's like if you're grasping so tightly onto this need to make the sale, you're actually sabotaging yourself, and it can be challenging to let go of that. But it needs to be a focus, because if I need the sale more than you need to buy the solution, it's not going to work out. This is why I actually really dislike Jordan Belfort's "be enthusiastic as hell" on sales calls. I have never bought something happily when the salesperson seemed more excited about making the sale than I felt about buying. That's a weird feeling. You don't want that. Lean back, be detached. Know that if you have faith and you are a good person and you focus on providing value to the market, you'll always be taken care of in some way, shape, or form. And it might not even come in the form of a sale, but someone is willing to help you out and you actually accept that support that's being offered. See, a lot of people close themselves off to opportunities because they feel that getting support is weak, or they feel they don't deserve it, right? A lot of people will also just keep themselves completely stuck because they think that they have to work hard in order to be compensated adequately. Like, I grew up with this monetary belief instilled by my mom. Like, thanks, Mom, I got a lot of great things from you. This wasn't one of them. That money is hard come, easy go. And if you have that pattern running in the back of your mind, you'll sabotage sales. You'll overcomplicate your business. You'll do things that you don't need to do that expend a lot more energy because you feel like you need to in order to be worthy of receiving the money. You don't. You just got to be able to help someone make their life a little better. So if I had like a hard and fast, magic word to get someone to release attachment from the sale, I would love that. That would help people make a lot of money. But really just focus on the fact that, neediness is creepiness. If you have commission breath, you're going to push people away. Just also focus on the things in your life outside of maybe your financial situation that are going well. Like for me, when things were going pretty shitty and I struggled to find my sense of certainty, hey, I've got one thing. I'm good at music. I love music. Music loves me. So if I can find my certainty there and then just bring that into my sales conversation, makes a big difference. And I have a video on this. It's called Unlocking Your Flow State so you can close more sales. It has to do with anchoring these certain psychological states with a smell. It's pretty cool. I know it's helped a few people, and maybe it'll help you too if this is something that you're personally dealing with. But you've just got to focus on be of service to other people when you can provide enough value to the market and be willing to accept the rewards. You're going to be okay. It's all going to work out. Might not be the way that you wanted, but it'll work out the way you needed. And hindsight's 20/20. Look back on your life. I know we've all been through some crazy shit. It may look different for all of us, but you've made it up to this date. You're not watching this from 6 feet under, right? So you've made it through 100% of the worst possible days in your life. You've made it through every single one. Why can't you make it through the next if you just focus on one step forward? Hopefully that helps. If that resonates with you, smash the heart button.
Yeah, let us know, by the way, if you got any value so far out of this interview, just drop us a hashtag value in the comments. Let me also know what tip or takeaway was most powerful to you in the interview, because it gives me an idea also what kind of content really resonates with you guys. So another question for you, man, that kind of feeds off of what you said about Jordan Belfort and the whole be enthusiastic on the call thing. What are some other things that are pushed in the whole sales space that you disagree with, and why?
Oh, that's a good question. Man, there's a lot. So don't be over enthusiastic. People talk about how you got to have the perfect script or say all the right things. I said this before, but I don't believe in scripts. I believe in frameworks that allow you to have a real human-to-human conversation that checks off the important boxes required for helping someone to make an educated, emotional purchasing decision. Like, throw away your scripts. I've read through the best. They're not any better than someone who's able to tap into the right questions and be emotionally present. I mean, if it was just a matter of having the perfect script, we would have chatbots just run them. We wouldn't have salespeople. Plain and simple. We've got AI that can just read stuff off a script. If that was the best possible situation, all these multi-million-dollar companies would just do that instead of paying sales reps and entrepreneurs commissions. Believe me, I'm sure a lot of offer owners would rather pay for a one-time bot setup than a real human. The reason they don't do it is because you can't beat a real human-to-human interaction when it comes to sales. So that's the biggest one, man. Like, throw away your scripts, be a real human. If you can do that in the right way, you're equipped with more than you need to close a lot more sales and change more lives in the process.
Cool. So someone mentioned a comment here of one of the things that really stood out to them was where you mentioned getting the prospect to commit to the process before presenting the price. Mm-hmm. I have a question for you feeding off of that, kind of going a different angle, but a lot of times, like what you were talking about is, getting them to buy into the actual process and selling the value to them and all of that, getting them to actually, overcoming any objections and concerns they might have there before you get to the price. Do you think there's a place for, actually mentioning price even before they get on the sales call in content? That's a question I find interesting because people approach it differently. So what are your thoughts when it comes to when to reveal the price, and if there's a one size fits all rule, or if you would change it based on certain scenarios?
Yeah. So the only good answer is that it does depend. I mean, to be clear, I've sold up to $997 courses through just a post alone. So, some people might consider that high ticket. I think of high ticket more like 5, 6, 30 grand, for example. And these are going to be way harder to sell in content or even in Messenger, for example. If you're not consistently closing sales calls, don't try and sell stuff in Messenger that's over a couple $100. You're going to run into a lot of frustration and burn out leads that could have bought otherwise. Now, to answer that question a little bit more specifically, though, while I don't typically advocate for sharing your actual price in content, because this just allows people to window shop under the assumption that it's the same thing that they could get elsewhere, when what you really need to do is help someone realize that you are the only relevant solution for their specific problem. And this is done through careful content and well-executed sales calls. What you can do is price anchor. And so, for example, if I was going to sell a business development offer for an entrepreneur that wants to scale their business, I might actually make a post talking about how the average American, spends over $100,000 in college education and comes out of that only making $60,000 a year. So they're willing to go into a lot of debt to go through this process with the hope that they might be able to get a job that can hardly even come close to paying off the debt that they're in. While on the flip side, there are entrepreneurs out there. So I'm depersonalizing a little bit so that they can put their shoes in or put themselves in those shoes. Well, there's entrepreneurs out there who are investing a mere 5 figures into themselves, able to make multiple 7 figures in revenue as a result on a per year basis. What would be the smarter choice then, if you had the option to go with traditional education or this new age education system? There we go. So I'm setting like a price anchor of $100,000 for not even a great opportunity, in contrast to an investment that might be half the size and yield way bigger results. Could also frame that in terms of investing in the stock market, for example. Would I want to invest $100,000 for 6% returns when I knew without a shadow of a doubt there was another investment vehicle where I could put in half and double my returns a lot quicker? No, of course I would go with the latter. Simple. So I'll price anchor with things that are relevant to what they're thinking about without specifically mentioning the price.
Cool. All right, man. So I only have 2 more questions for you because we're getting to like the hour point. So we'll wrap it up after these last 2 questions.
All right. I got to bounce right before the hour to prep for my next call. So we'll do them rapid fire.
Okay, cool. So the first question, we kind of touched on it before, but I just want to jump into it because I know a lot of people ask about this, is assuming they already overcame, other objections before talking about price. What are your top tips for overcoming price objections if it's truly, monetary objection?
So you want to go through my 4-step objection handling process, of course, to uncover the real objection. Once you have, you need to isolate it. So it's like, okay, well, if we were able to resolve that issue, does the process itself make sense for you? Is that the only thing holding you back from solving this problem today? Once I'm able to actually address that and isolate the objection, now we'll go in and look at it head on. So I'll, for example, ask, hey, are you open then to having an honest conversation about your finances so that we can figure out a way for you to solve this problem, always framed in their benefit. And that's where I'll go then and look at, for example, a payment plan or educating them on financing opportunities. Like, for example, a lot of people don't even know that PayPal Credit offers a 6-month interest-free line of credit where you have flexible payment terms. You can pay whatever you want on a monthly basis. Pretty cool. And I've seen people sign deals just using that because it's an instant approval or denial. So where someone might have, for example, not been able to afford your 3-month offer because even stretching that, investment over 3 months wouldn't be feasible. Stretching it over 6 with no added interest, all of a sudden it works. So get into problem solving mode with them. That's the key. If you identify that that's the only thing keeping them from being able to solve this issue, and they actually want to solve the issue, sit on the same side of the table with them and go over appropriate options, whether that means stretching it out into a payment plan or helping them figure out creative financing.
Cool. So this will be the last question, man, because I know you gotta jump and get on your next call.
Good.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, but I just want to get more in depth on it. What are your thoughts on messenger sales versus phone sales versus video sales like Zoom?
Yeah, I've sold as much as a $7,500 offer through Messenger, but my preference is still always to take them to the call. It requires a lot more skill and finesse to be able to close deals consistently, especially high ticket ones through Messenger. So instead of trying to figure out that skill set and leave a lot of money on the table in the process, instead just focus on the only sale you need to make in Messenger is getting them on a call. If you can do that, it's going to be so much easier to close them when you have the opportunity to meet face to face. That's the big thing. So instead of trying to sharpen that sword, just get them on the call. It's going to be a lot better because 1, way higher chance of closing that deal. 2, much better opportunity for customer research. 3, and the customer research meaning that you can continue to attract more of the same person that's willing and ready to say yes to your offer. 3, you prevent, like, for example, if you have a high touch coaching program, you don't want people that are going to be massively energy consumptive in contrast to the amount that they're investing. Some clients, there's no amount that they could pay me that would be worth me working with them because they're so draining. And I will say no to people who I don't feel culturally aligned with because I want there to be a win-win situation anytime I'm going to do business with someone. So sales calls allow you to close way more deals, get better customer research so you can attract the best possible prospects, and also gatekeep so you keep the wrong people from coming into your program that could end up being chargebacks, refunds, way energy consumptive that burn you out of your business, ruin the culture, for example, inside of your group coaching program because you've got this one bad apple that ruins the whole bunch. Obviously, I believe in sales calls. So there's a whole lot of reasons why I'd say just in Messenger, the only sale that you need to make is getting them on the call. Pre-framed, of course, that there is a problem and they're looking for a solution. But then just handle it on a call. A lot easier.
Cool. Well, thanks for jumping into our group, man. Appreciate it. You dropped a lot of value bombs. If you guys got value out of this interview, let me know below. Just drop a hashtag value and also let me know what stood out to you, what takeaways you got from this interview. So, I promised a free gift to everybody who came and tuned in with us. Grant can tell you a little bit about what that free gift is, but for those of you who want to get your hands on that gift, just comment below with hashtag gift, and I'll make sure you get the link for that as well. Grant, can you tell them a bit about what exactly they're going to get?
Oh, yeah. I've dropped a few open loops throughout this interview, so I know it's probably in the back of your mind. The 7 questions that you must ask to prevent objections from even coming up in the first place on sales calls. You can get it granteilertson.com/7 questions or just comment gift down here and we'll make sure we get it to you. This will be Bible in terms of operating on your sales calls so you can close way more deals and change way more lives. It's so simple that even a rookie salesperson can take this, run with it, and start closing deals. But it's also so important that even if you are consistently closing sales now, I guarantee that if there's any of these questions you're not consistently asking, you could add a lot more sales to your bottom line. So don't sleep on it. Go ahead and pick that up and guarantee you won't regret it.
Perfect. So drop that comment below, #gift, so we know you want it, and we will make sure to get it into your hands. Well, thanks again, man. Appreciate having you here. Maybe we'll do a follow-up interview in the future. But
Sounds good, bro.
yeah, man, it was my honor, and thanks again.
If you liked that video, just wait till you see the next one. And if you haven't already, go right down below me and hit subscribe.